Hi, it's Dr. Mandy Reese with Reese's Pieces Diabetes. Thank you for joining me to learn more about diabetes management and technology in bite-sized pieces. In this session, we'll learn more about professional continuous glucose monitors. So, professional glucose monitors are CGMs that are owned by the clinic or the health system. The person with diabetes comes into the clinic or the office, has a sensor and transmitter placed on them. They wear it for 10 to 14 days. They return to the clinic with the equipment and the sensor, and then the data is downloaded and analyzed, then discussed in detail with the person with diabetes. The available professional CGMs on the market include the Dexcom G6, the Freestyle Libre Pro, and the Medtronic iPro 2. The duration of wear is anywhere from 6 to 14 days. The transmitter is disposable for the Dexcom. For Freestyle Libre, it's the combined sensor and transmitter, just like it is with Personal Libre. And then the Medtronic iPro 2 is a reusable transmitter. The iPro 2 does require calibration, so finger sticks twice a day, whereas the Dexcom and the Libre Pro don't require any calibrations. What's nice with the Dexcom is it can be blinded or unblinded. So, blinded means the person with diabetes isn't going to see what their glucose values are while wearing it. Unblinded means they see the value in real time in terms of what's happening to their glucose. Both the Libre and the iPro are blinded. So, the person with diabetes cannot see their glucose values while wearing the CGM. The value of a person being able to see their glucose values is the person can see and make modification and changes, particularly around lifestyle, if they actually see what is actually happening with their glucose. In terms of sharing, for the Dexcom, the person is going to return to the clinic with a device, and they will be able to look at the report either through the receiver device or through the Clarity app. The person that wears the Libre Pro will come to the clinic and they'll get the data downloaded. And then the same thing for the Medtronic, the transmitter will be downloaded. These are the available professional CGMs. On the top left, we have the Dexcom G6 Pro. On the right, we have the Libre Pro. And then down on the bottom, we have the Medtronic iPro 2. So why professional CGM? What's the real value for it? And I would say probably the number one reason would be pattern management. So the person with diabetes know what is actually happening to their glucose over time and actually identify patterns. So in other words, they can look at a video and see, it's analogous to a video, of what's happening with their glucose versus just taking looks at just points in time to see what's happening to their glucose. Certainly, it helps with insulin dose adjustment. So, for a person that has hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia, it really assists in looking at how do we adjust the insulin to prevent hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia. Oftentimes, if folks are going to have surgical procedures, maybe they need some type of hip or knee replacement, and they've been experiencing hyperglycemia, maybe their A1C is 10 or 12. For that person, having professional CGM is super helpful because you can look at the data for the last 6 to 14 days to say, okay, there's good glycemic control here in order for them to be approved to have surgery. So it's a great resource for that. And then for those who are implementing lifestyle changes, so maybe those with pre-diabetes or folks with type 2 are new to diagnosis, and they want to see what impact do those dietary choices in physical activity have on their glucose, and it gives them great feedback. So, who are candidates for a professional CGM? Certainly, those who are newly diagnosed with diabetes, those who aren't currently using a professional continuous glucose monitor. Maybe they're interested in it, but they're not quite ready to do it and they want to try it out. A professional CGM is a great way for them to give a trial of the CGM without committing to buying one themselves. Certainly, folks that have hypoglycemia, but they don't have access to a personal CGM. So their insurance doesn't cover a personal CGM, but they want to know about what is causing their hypoglycemia. How can we resolve that? So professional CGM is certainly very helpful. I mentioned this early for a person that wants to give it a try run. It's kind of like a test drive of a CGM by using the professional. For folks who, and I actually had a conversation with somebody the other week about this, who's fearful about having something attached to their body. So it's a great way for them to try it out and see what it's really like without making a long term commitment. And for persons with type 2 diabetes who maybe aren't on insulin therapy, but they would benefit from periodic CGM evaluation of their glucose to see, are the medications working? Are their lifestyle working? And it really gives good information for them to have and for their healthcare provider. So, partnerships. I'm really big on collaborations. So, I'm going to give you a couple of stories here in terms of programs that are actually collaborating with diabetes care and education specialists. I am affiliated with Northeast Georgia Health System up in Gainesville, Georgia, and the diabetes education department there offers professional CGM. So, what happens is the primary care provider or maybe a specialist refers the person with diabetes to the Diabetes Education Center for professional CGM. The CGM is placed on the person. They return back to the center in 10 days because they happen to use the 10-day product. The CGM is downloaded and the information is sent to the ordering healthcare provider. And then that provider is able to discuss the reports of the CGM values with that person with diabetes. My friend Lucille up in New York also has a diabetes education program, and the diabetes care and education specialists actually work in the primary care offices in her health system. And in that system, the the persons with diabetes are referred to the diabetes care and education specialist. They put the sensor on the person with diabetes, have them come back, and then they download the results and they share it with the primary care provider. Now, something that Lucille and her team do that's a little bit different is that they bring the person back halfway through and show them results of what's happening with their glucose the first half of the days that they're wearing, and then encourage the person to make additional lifestyle changes the second half. And then they come back in and the results are downloaded, they're shared with the primary care provider, and then those results are discussed and adjustments are made to the diabetes care plan. So, can you bill for these services? Absolutely. This is a great opportunity for revenue generation. So, there's a couple of CPT codes that I'm going to talk about in detail that are not time based codes, but they are billable codes. So, let's delve in with the first one. And this is CPT code 95250. And this is used for professional CGM training and recording of data. So it's not billed at the first visit where the CGM, professional CGM, is placed on the person with diabetes. It's billed at that follow up visit when they come back to have their sensor, their transmitter downloaded and the data analyzed. Now, that first visit where the sensor is placed on the person with diabetes, the billing is not happening at that visit, but that visit has to be face to face. And also, this particular code can be billed one time a month. So the diabetes and education specialist, a registered dietitian, a registered nurse, a pharmacist, and medical assistant, if it's in their scope of practice, will bill this code under their on-site physician or qualified healthcare provider, such as a nurse practitioner or physician associate. In documenting when billing for this code, here on the slide, I have the information that must be included in the note. It's important to make sure that each of these points are put in the note when billing. The next code is the 95251. This is for the analysis and interpretation of that CGM report, which is the standardized report known as the ambulatory glucose profile report. You have to have at least 72 hours of data. It can be billed once a month. Now, this visit does not have to be face to face. It could be a telehealth visit. The healthcare provider bills for this service. So, whether it's a MD, a DO, a nurse practitioner, a physician associate, other clinicians like myself, PharmDs, other diabetes care and education specialists may be able to bill for interpretation working with a collaborative practice agreement. Please note that this is dependent on state law. Now, in terms of documentation, what has to be included? Certainly the person's name and date of birth, their diagnosis for diabetes, what device was placed, how many days it was worn, and then the components of the ambulatory glucose profile report, which I'll talk about more in our next bite-sized piece for CGM, and also the dates that the CGM was worn, and then the analysis of the data. What did we take away from it? Did we see hyperglycemia, hypoglycemia, certain times of the day? The interpretation of the data. Later on in an upcoming session, I'm going to talk about a method called the data method when we're interpreting the ambulatory glucose profile report. It's certainly the signature of the interpreting healthcare provider. So that's the short and the skinny on professional CGMs. I hope you find this session useful. Thanks for joining me in this bite-sized learning piece. Leave your feedback and your comments, and please make sure to share and subscribe to Reese's Pieces Diabetes YouTube channel. Thanks so much.